The sky over Moore, Oklahoma, darkened like someone had pulled a blanket over the sun. The weather radio crackled with warnings, but people in this town had heard them before. Tornadoes were part of life, here dangerous, terrifying, but familiar. Yet today, something felt different. The air was heavy, trembling, almost alive. Dr. Joe Teller sensed it the moment she stepped outside the clinic. Joe was known in town as the doctor who never panicked. Calm, steady, focused. But even she felt a strange shiver when the first sirens wailed. She looked toward Plaza Towers Elementary, the school across the field. Dozens of children were inside. Teachers were gathering them in hallways, following drills they had practiced many times. None of them knew this storm would be unlike anything they'd ever seen. The radio's voice grew sharp. This is an EF5, direct path. More. Impact in minutes. EF5. The worst category. Winds capable of ripping asphalt from roads. Joe didn't think. She moved. Her coworkers yelled for her to stay inside, but she ignored them, gripping her medical bag and running toward the school as the wind picked up dirt and debris, swirling around her legs like warning hands. Inside the school, chaos was growing. Teachers pushed desks aside, ushering kids into central corridors. Some children cried, others clutched stuffed animals or backpacks, trying to be brave. Principal Harris shouted instructions, her voice shaking but strong. When she saw Joe burst through the doors, she looked stunned. "Dr. Teller, what are you doing?" Joe answered simply, "Helping." The building groaned as the storm approached. Joe moved quickly, checking children for asthma, panic attacks, or injuries from the rush to hide. She recognized a boy, Liam, who struggled to breathe when frightened. She knelt, placing a calming hand on his chest. "Look at me. Slow breaths. You're safe. I'm right here." Outside, the sky split with a roar like a train, screaming in the dark. Then came the impact. The tornado slammed into the far side of the school, tearing brick and steel as if made of paper. Walls buckled, ceiling tiles crashed down. Teachers shielded students with their bodies. Joe didn't hesitate. She pulled 3 children into a doorway, covering them with her arms as a violent gust ripped lockers from the walls and hurled them down the corridor. The sound was deafening, metal twisting, glass exploding, the furious howl of the storm. For a moment, Joe couldn't tell if she was breathing. She only knew she had to keep the kids beneath her safe. A section of the ceiling cracked above them, but instead of panicking, she shifted her body, taking the debris on her shoulder. Pain shot through her, but she held steady. And as quickly as it hit, the storm passed. The silence afterward was even worse. Dust hung in the air like fog. The hallway was filled with broken beams, shattered doors, and frightened voices. Joe stood, ignoring the throbbing pain, and began moving through the wreckage. "Call out if you can hear me!" she yelled. A faint voice answered from somewhere deep under debris. It was a little girl named Emma, trapped beneath a collapsed wall. Joe dropped to her knees, pulling pieces of drywall away with bare hands. Her fingers bled, but she didn't stop until she could see Emma's terrified eyes. "You're okay, sweetheart. I've got you." She freed the girl, then lifted her gently, checking for fractures. Emma clung to her, shaking uncontrollably. Joe carried Emma to a safer area where surviving teachers gathered children. She began triage bleeding, fractures, shock. She tore strips from her own shirt to use as bandages when supplies ran out. Outside, emergency crews were still minutes away. Minutes these children didn't have. Joe worked with a fierce, quiet determination, her mind clear despite the destruction around her. Then she heard another cry, this one weaker. She followed the sound into what had been a classroom. The roof was gone. Rain fell through twisted beams. Beneath a desk, 2 boys were trapped by cinder blocks. Joe crawled in, water soaking her clothes, and carefully lifted the blocks one by one. Her arms trembled from exhaustion, but she refused to stop until the boys were free. One boy's leg was badly cut. Joe wrapped it with the last clean gauze she had. "It's deep, but you'll be okay," she told him softly. He looked up at her with wide, wet eyes. "Are you an angel?" She smiled, brushing dust from his hair. "No, honey. I'm just someone who's not leaving you." She guided them toward the main hallway, stepping over shattered glass and fallen beams. More cries, more fear. Joe became everywhere at once, lifting rubble, comforting screaming children, checking pulses, stopping bleeding. At one point, she found the principal trapped under a door frame. Joe and a teacher together pulled her out. "You saved them," the principal whispered. Joe shook her head. "We all did. We're still doing it." But deep down, she knew many had survived because she ran in. Finally, sirens approached. Firefighters and medics rushed inside, shocked at the sight of the destruction and at the woman already coordinating the rescue as if she had been leading it for hours. "We have multiple injuries," she told them quickly. "Kids in shock, fractures, possible head trauma. I'll help with triage." No one argued. They followed her lead. Word spread quickly. The doctor who had run into the storm? News reporters later tried to interview her, but Joe avoided them. She stayed with the children instead, riding with them in ambulances, comforting them in the hospital, calling families. When parents hugged her, crying, thanking her for saving their kids, she always answered the same. "I just did what anyone would do." But not everyone would have. Emergency officials later confirmed. The section where Joe moved the children was one of the only parts of the building that didn't collapse. Had they remained in their original classrooms, many of those kids would not have survived. Her decision, made in seconds, changed the fate of dozens of families forever. In the following weeks, the community rebuilt. Schools reopened. Families grieved their losses, but also celebrated miracles. And through it all, Joe stayed humble. She returned to work at her small clinic, treating coughs and colds, broken bones and bruises, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But to the people of Moore, she was more than a doctor. She was the woman who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. Children she saved brought her drawings, tiny crayon tornadoes and scribbled figures labeled Dr. Joe. Parents brought her meals. Strangers stopped her on the street just to say thank you. One day, little Emma, the girl she saved from the rubble, came to the clinic with flowers. "These are for saving my life," she said softly. Joe knelt down, touched by the gesture. "You don't owe me anything," she replied. "Just grow up, be kind, and help others when you can. That's the best thanks you could ever give." Years later, survivors would still tell the story. Teachers remembered her calm voice in the chaos. Children remembered her arms, shielding them from falling debris. Rescue workers remembered seeing her standing among the ruins, covered in dust, exhausted, but still helping. A symbol of courage born not from strength, but from compassion. Joe never called herself a hero. She never liked the word. Heroes, she thought, were legendary figures, not everyday people doing their best. But the truth is this: sometimes real heroes don't wear capes. They wear scrubs. They run toward screams. They step into storms. And they do it not for glory, but because their heart won't let them do anything else. And so the legend of Dr. Joe Teller grew, carried in the memories of the children she saved. Not a myth, not a movie, but a real story, one that proved that even in the darkest, most violent moments, a single person's bravery can change the ending. The storm tried to take everything that day, but it met a woman who refused to let the children go.